although what you witnessed in the first part is the perfect example of the turpitude that the human condition exists with, the full extent of the dark path upon which our friends have been is still to be revealed. The exposition begins with Mr. Gerard Croft, polite, unimposing, and completely disconnected. Or so it may seem.
I'll say it one more time. She changed her name to Daisy Renton.
Sheila, do you mind if I pour myself a drink?
I'll just go and get some more. We're out of gin.
Well, Gerald?
Well, what, Sheila?
How did you know? Eva Smith, or Daisy Renton, I suppose.
I didn't. Why should I have known her?
Don't be stupid. You gave yourself away. We haven't much time.
Fine, I knew her. Please just leave it at that.
No, that's of no use. You not only knew her, but you knew her well. So, when did you get to know her? Well, was it after she left Rymarx? When she changed her name and began to lead a different sort of life? Oh, last summer, when you hardly came near me, you were with her.
I'm so sorry, Sheila, but I hadn't set eyes on the girl for at least 6 months. I don't come into this suicide business. I don't.
You absolute fool! She knows. Of course she knows, and I hate to think how much she knows that we don't.
Shh, the inspector? She doesn't know this. How could she?
Stop it. I refuse to protect her from this. She knows. I know she does. You'll see.
Well,
I think, Inspector, that Sheila should be excused of any more of this questioning. She's had a long and tiring day. She has nothing more to tell you. We were celebrating our engagement, you know. She's obviously heard about as much as she can stand.
what do you mean by that?
She means I'm being hysterical.
And are you?
Probably.
Well, I've nothing more to ask you. I don't want to keep you.
But you haven't finished asking questions yet, have you?
No.
Then I'm staying.
But why? You hate it. It's bound to be unpleasant and disturbing.
And young women deserve to be protected from unpleasant and disturbing things.
Yes!
Well, we all know one young woman who wasn't, don't we?
Sheila, just go! You'll hate it!
It can't get any worse, dear.
Ah, I see.
See what?
You've been through it. Now you want to see someone else put
So
through it.
that's what you think I'm really like, Gerald? Well, thank you. I'm glad I realized it in time.
Sheila, I didn't mean that.
Yes, you did, and if you'd loved me, you couldn't have said it. You heard the nice story about how I got the girl fired, and you've made up your mind that I must be a selfish and vindictive bitch.
Sheila, I'm sorry, I didn't
Miss
mean...
Burling has just been made to understand what she did to this girl. And if she leaves now, she'll feel that she's entirely to blame, alone with her guilt tonight, and tomorrow, and the next...
That's it. I know I'm to blame, and I'm desperately sorry. But I can't believe, no, I won't believe that it's simply my fault in the end. That would be too horrible.
Yes, the guilt isn't for one person alone.
Good evening, Inspector.
Good evening.
I'm Mrs. Burling, you know. And my husband has just explained to me why you're here. And while we'll be glad to answer any questions you may have, I'm afraid we can't help you very much. What's the matter, dear?
We all started like that, Mother, so confident and pleased with ourselves. And then she started asking questions.
Oh, you seem to have made quite an impression on this child, Inspector.
We often do on the young ones. They're quite impressionable.
You're looking tired, dear, you know. You ought to go to bed and forget all about this absurd business. In any case, I don't think we can understand why the wretch killed herself. I mean, girls of that class are just...
Don't.
Well, I don't understand what's got into this girl or what she's talking about, do you, Inspector?
Yes, I do. And incidentally, she's right.
I beg your pardon.
Mother, please stop.
No, if you're worrying that the Inspector will take offence...
I never take offence. In fact, perhaps it's best we leave offence out of it.
I think we'd better.
I understand that you say you have to conduct some sort of inquiry, but it seems to me that so far you seem to be conducting it in a rather peculiar and offensive manner. You of course know that my husband was the Lord Mayor only 2 years ago, and that he's still a magistrate.
Where is Mr. Burling?
Oh, well, he's just with our son Eric, who seems to be in a rather excitable, silly mood.
What's the matter with him?
Ah, I'm afraid he might have had a little bit too much to drink tonight.
Isn't he used to drinking?
Oh, no, of course not. He's only a boy.
No, he's a young man, and some young men, Mrs. Burling, drink rather too much.
And Eric's one of them.
Sheila!
I'm sorry, I don't want to get poor Eric into trouble, but he's probably in enough trouble already as it is. And this is not the time to pretend that Eric isn't used to drink. He's been drinking too much for a few years now.
Nonsense! Well, that isn't true. Well, Gerald, you know that isn't true.
Well, I don't...
Well, Mr. Croft?
I'm afraid it is, you know. I don't see much of him outside of this house, but from what I've gathered, he does drink himself pretty hard.
And this is the moment you chose to tell me. If necessary, I shall be glad to answer any questions the inspector may have. Although, naturally, I know nothing about the girl.
We'll see, Mrs. Burling.
I've been trying to persuade Eric to go to bed, but he just won't. He says you've asked him to stay up, Inspector.
I did.
Why?
Because I wish to speak with him.
Well, I don't see why you should, but if you must go and speak to him now and then let the lad go.
No, I'm afraid I'll have to wait. He must wait his turn.
Look here, Inspector, I've told you before, I don't like your tone or the way you're handling this investigation. And I don't propose to allow my family to give you any more rope.
Anyway, let's recap. This girl, Eva Smith, lost her job at Primark's a year ago when Miss Burling here compelled them to discharge her. And after that, she stopped being Eva Smith and became Daisy Renton with other ideas. Mr. Croft, when did you first get to know her?
I say again, what gives
Oh,
you the...
come off it, Gerald. You gave yourself away as soon as she mentioned Daisy
Yes,
Renton.
he did. Regardless, I knew already. When and where did you first meet the girl?
Fine. I met her first in March of last year, in the Palace Bar. I mean the Palace Music Hall in Mile End, of course. I'd happened to look in one night after a long and tiring day, and as the show wasn't up to much, I went into the bar for a drink. It's a favourite haunt for women of the town.
You mean whores, Gerald dear?
Sheila! Don't use such filthy language.
I didn't propose to stay there long. I hate those hard-eyed, dough-faced women. They make me ill. But then I saw a girl who looked quite different. She was very pretty. Sandy, blonde hair, big eyes. She was fresh-faced and charming and clearly out of place down there. I mean, she obviously wasn't enjoying herself. Oh, Peter Shortland, half drunk and goggle-eyed, had her wedged into a corner with that obscene carcass of his. The girl saw me looking at her and gave me a look that was nothing less than a cry for help. So I went over there and I told him that he had a message waiting for him upstairs. His wife wanted something or the other, you know. I told the girl, after he'd left, that if she didn't want any more of that sort of thing, she'd better let me take her out of there. She agreed at once.
And where did you go?
To a hotel, which I knew would be quiet at this time of night. We had a drink or two, and we talked.
About?
She talked about herself mostly. I asked her questions about herself, and she told me her name was Daisy Renton, and that she'd had a job at the works here, but had to leave after a strike. She said also that she'd had a job at Primark, but had to leave for some reason. She was deliberately vague about that. I couldn't get any details about her past life. She just wanted to talk. I guess she was just desperate for some company and kindness. I felt she really wanted to be Daisy Renton, but I always knew she was hiding something. What she did let slip, although she didn't mean to, was that she was desperately hungry, starving in fact, and living off scraps. I made the people at the hotel find some food for her.
And did you keep her on as your mistress?
I discovered, not that night, but 2 nights later, when we met again by design, of course, that she hadn't a penny to her name, and was going to be turned out of that miserable back room she had had. It so happened that a friend of mine, Gregory Michael, had gone to Canada for 6 months, and let me have the key to some very nice flats, somewhere known as Floyer House. He asked me to keep an eye on them and use them if I wished. So I insisted that Daisy, or Eva, or whomsoever she was, to take the rooms. And I made her take some money to keep her going there. I want you to understand that I didn't install her there to make her my mistress. I made her go to Floyer because I felt sorry for her. I felt she deserved a decent place to live, and I certainly didn't like the idea of her going back to that palace bar. I asked for nothing in return.
You didn't answer my question, Mr. Croft. Did she become your mistress?
I suppose it was inevitable. She was young and pretty, warm-hearted and intensely grateful. I became the most important person in her life immediately, you see.
And were you in love with her?
That's what I was going to ask.
Now really, I must protest.
Why should you protest? It was you who turned her out in the first place.
Look, I told you I did what any employer would have done. And what I was going to say is that I don't like the way you've dragged my daughter into this, a young unmarried girl.
Your daughter isn't living on the moon, Mr. Burling. She's involved in this too.
Yes, I got her fired from Rhinemarks. Well, Joe, were you in love with her?
It's hard to say. I didn't feel the same about her as she did me.
You were the knight in shining armor. You must have adored it, Gerald.
All right, I did. For a time, any man would have.
As if that makes it any better. And did you see her every night?
No, I wasn't lying, you know. I was extremely busy at the works. But I did see a great deal of her. Anything else, Inspector?
Yes. When did this affair end?
By the first week of September. I had gone away for several weeks for business, and by that time Daisy knew it was coming to an end, so I broke it off before we left.
And how did she take it?
Better than I'd hoped. She was very gallant about it.
So that must have been nice for you.
No, it wasn't. She told me that she had been happier than she had ever been, but knew it couldn't last. Hadn't expected it to last. She didn't even blame me at all. I wish she had now. Maybe I'd feel better about it.
She had to move out of the rooms?
Yes, we'd agreed on that. She'd saved a little money over the summer. She lived very economically on what I'd allowed her, and simply refused to take any more. I insisted, however, on a small sum of money to see her through to the end of the year, although it wasn't very much.
And did she tell you what she planned to do when she'd left?
No, she refused. I got the idea, however, that she was going to leave London. Whether she did or not, I have no idea. Did she?
Yes. She went to some seaside place for about 2 months.
By herself?
Yes. I think she went away to be alone. To be quiet. To remember all that had happened between you two.
How do you know this?
She kept a diary, and in it, she wrote that she went away to be by herself. To be quiet and to remember. To make it last a little bit longer. She felt as if there'd never be anything so good for her in her life again. She had to make it last longer.
I see. Well, I never saw her again, and I've nothing more to tell you.
That's all I want to know from you.
In that case, Inspector, perhaps you'd allow me to be alone for a while. I'm rather more upset about this than I'd like to show any of you.
Where? Home?
No, I'll just go outside and walk around for a bit. I'll be back.
All right, Mr. Croft.
Gerald, you'd better take this in case you forget or choose not to come back.
I see. Well, I was expecting this.
You know, I don't dislike you as much as I did, and in some odd way I'd rather respect you for telling the truth. I knew you were lying to me last summer. I knew there was something odd about that time. And I do believe you that at first you were helping her out of pity. And to be honest, it's my fault she was so desperate when you first met her. But we're not the same people who sat down at dinner tonight. I need to be able to trust you.
I know. And I'm coming back, if I may.
All right.
Excuse me.
You know, Inspector, you never did show him the picture.
I didn't think it was necessary, and in fact, I thought I'd better not.
You have the photograph of this girl?
Yes. Perhaps you ought to see it.
I don't see any reason why.
Perhaps not. but I think you better see it.